My name is Blake Eggleston. I'm a pre-law political science major at the University of Kentucky. Given my choice in study, I am often asked to give my opinion regarding the role of federal judges and whether or not they should behave more as activists, adding to the implication of the Constitution, or as strict constitutionalists, avoiding any unneeded expansion of federal powers. I have consistently appealed to the latter, as I feel too often judges use their own politics instead of the way that actual honest judicial work should be done, and it can lead to mixing opinion with constitutionality. And this would skew my opinion in this conversation. This phenomenon can be seen most evidently in the article from Fox contributor Mark Davis, released on February 20th, 2025, where he details how federal judges in Washington and in other states are taking activist approaches in halting Donald Trump's efforts to make federal agencies and bureaucracies more efficient. But instead of taking this article at face value, we should instead determine its credibility by using the CAARP checklist, a process used to determine the credibility and authority of any given source, and can be found detailed on the UK Library's website. The checklist first asks us to determine the currency of our chosen source. For this, we simply need to ascertain when the article was published and when the data was last updated. And for our purposes, this is going to be simple, as it would be the same for both. And it is quite recent and up to date. Mike Davis's article was published on Fox on February 20th of this year. As such, it is quite up to date, having been released only 10 days prior to my recording this. Next to the checklist, we are asked to determine the relevance of our selected source, which is to say we are being asked if the source effectively answers our questions regarding the topic or topics on hand. I would say that it does accomplish this, as it details two separate instances in which our phenomenon of judges choosing their own politics over actual law is exemplified. Next, we have to determine the level of authority our author, Mike Davis, has on the topic. On hand. Mike Davis, from what Fox provides, is the founder of Article 3 Project, an organization that offers clerkship to young lawyers and is dedicated to an originality understanding of the Constitution. As such, he has proven to be at the very least invested in the topic he's discussing. But we don't have to be limited to that. According to Federalist Society, he has worked extensively in federal government, as he has worked for all three branches of federal government. He has worked for President George W. Bush, the Justice Department, and House Speaker Newt Gingrich. So it's fair to say that he has an expert understanding of the federal process. Now, we must determine the accuracy of these claims. We can verify the attempt of federal circuit courts to prevent Doge access to data, as it is seconded by other reputable news sources such as CBS News. Now, as this is an opinion article, it is pretty easy to determine the purpose of the source. It is there to convince the reader that change in judges and how judges operate need to be made. To a Forbes database last updated on March 3rd, 2025, as of writing this, Rupert Murdoch is the largest shareholder of Fox and could be considered its owner. Historically, he has had ties to the GOP and is considered right-leaning. This would influence the information we see in our article, as it would seemingly favor Trump. The article does in fact come from a reputable news outlet and from an authority in the field it is discussing, but would likely contain some bias as it is heavily politically charged from a right-leaning source. Despite seemingly passing most of the CAARP checklist with flying colors, this article still, however, would contain two sources of probable bias. Firstly, seeing as the author of this article is the founder of an organization which appeals to a more original understanding of the Constitution, it's clear that he would likely be opposed to the actions of activist judges. Furthermore, as he is a contributor for a right-leaning news organization, it's likely that he would be less critical of President Trump in this article.